Hello everyone, so here I'm back again with another Escalation Tier 10 video. This time I'm gonna be playing Space Administration HQ for that sweet targeted LMG. Let me show you my build real quick. I'm using 4-piece strikers, all pieces with echo, critical hit damage, along with the backpack and the chest piece. I'm using the X Club because these things are great for solo play, and chest and knee pads with echo and almost god roll DPS stats. For my guns, I'm using double MK46 with Echo, Critical Hit Chance, and Frenzy. That way I can deal with the Variety Pack debuff. I'm also using Quickstep, Reviver Hype, Decoy, and the Gunner Specialization. And for my Seasonal Modifier, already have it maxed out, I'm using Invincible Active Modifier along with Munitions Belt, Contagion, and Surge Drive Passive Modifiers. For my stats, here are all the sources for critical hit chance. I have 186.3% critical hit damage and a sum of 201.5% all weapon damage plus LMG damage. So let's start with the run. So as soon as we climb through this wall, we are going to be throwing a decoy to the left side of this room or this little hallway thingy, and we are going to be taking cover so that we can deal with the enemies that we have right in front of us. After we kill some of the enemy from the beginning enemy wave, we're going to be getting more enemies towards the back of the room. Now, because of the mutator pool that we have currently for Year 8 Season 2.2 and potentially Year 8 Season 2.3, we have to prioritize shooting at the enemies that have the one-for-all mutator. That way, we can spread a ton of damage to all of the nearby enemies. And in this mission in particular, we can definitely benefit from that mutator. Like, even though the rooms or the encounters in this mission are quite open, most of the time the enemies, we're gonna have to find them in a pretty close quarter combat. So anyways, keep that in mind for the next room as we go along. So for this part right here, we're gonna be staying on the first piece of cover that we have right next to us. And from here, we can fight against the enemy waves that we're gonna be getting both from the bottom floor as long as the top floor. Now, one thing to keep into mind is that we don't want to walk past where I put my decoy, because otherwise we are going to be spawning one of the next enemy waves. Yes, there's a next enemy wave that we can spawn on solo at least. So ideally we want to first deal with the first enemy wave, and then once we deal with them, run towards that where I put my decoy, around that distance. We're going to spawn the next enemy wave, and we can fight them from over here without too much of an issue. There's a ton of cover so that we can cut line of sight with the enemies that we can get throughout this room right here. It can be a little bit daunting, but as I said, we have a ton of cover too to protect us. And don't make this room that tricky to fight in. So yeah, talking a bit about the mission in the meantime, I do think that Space Admin is definitely one of those missions that I don't find that easy to do, especially for solo play. And it's a mission where I think that the completion time for solo play is going to be significantly longer than what you can achieve on co-op play. On co-op, I can definitely get a ton of 20-minute run towards on this mission, thanks in fact because I have many people helping me with dealing with the enemies. While in this mission, on the other hand, a ton of the rooms can get so tricky that it can be difficult to get a consistent completion time, especially on the last mission. So because of that, keep that into mind when farming this mission, especially on your own. Now, as soon as we walk downstairs, we can find the first gear crate out of 3 in this mission. I actually got a pretty good LMG for this gear crate, named Carnage with critical hit chance, which can be a pretty good gun for an ongoing directive build. So yeah, it was actually pretty exciting. I don't normally get that many exciting gear drops anymore, even though the rolls are pretty good. As I said, most of the time I just deconstruct the pieces for prototype cores. So it kind of explains why I normally don't show the prototype drops on these missions. So anyways, we want to deal with the first enemies that are going to be rappelling down from the left side, as well as the enemy that is going to be rushing towards our right side as soon as we enter the room. Those are the three enemies that we want to focus all of our fire on. And as soon as we get those, or if we are able to kill at least two of those enemies, we can run towards this piece of cover and fight the rest of the enemy waves from over here. So this is pretty much what I'm doing. We have to be careful with not suppressing the enemies that often so that the encounter doesn't get that long. And with that, we should be able to kill all of the enemies without too much of an issue. There you go. Pretty straightforward encounter, I think, once you get down the strategy. And I'm gonna be grabbing the LMG drops to have my LMG ready for the next encounter. We'll open this door. If you don't have enough ammo, at least 700 LMG bullets, there's an ammo crate over there. And as soon as we go upstairs, we are gonna be finding the next enemies to fight against. As always, if you have an enemy with one for all, I highly suggest that you focus all your fire against that enemy, because we are gonna be spreading all of the enemy fire towards all the nearby enemies. Like, I kill pretty much all the enemy just from shooting a one for all enemy on the top floor. And then there's another one for all enemy on the lower floor, which I'm gonna be shooting to deal most of the damage to the nearby enemies. There are only two yellows left because of the mutator, which is a pretty good mutator overall. Like, I really like one for all. I haven't seen, guys, if the mutator has also is gonna get patched for for the next season. No, well, not next season, the next patch that should be dropping tomorrow. So yeah, I should be updating you guys with another comment. Don't know if in this video or in the one for all mutator that I released back then, but yeah, I'll be checking this a few hours after I end up recording this video. Also, you already saw the gear crate number 2 that I show on the upper floor of the previous room. I got a pretty decent M60 with steady-handed, which I also found pretty good. It has paradox, and I think with an extended magazine, I should be able to get an LMG that I should be able to shoot for eternity, essentially. Should be a pretty good gun to try out for something like tipping scales. And I also got, I won the lottery, the Escalation lottery, and I managed to get a pair of healer gloves, prototype healer gloves with repair skills and skill haste. Don't remember the name of the brand. It's the one with the little mountain icon thingy. So yeah, got pretty lucky again with the drops in this mission. Wasn't expecting to get those kind of drops. I was looking for another Frenzy LMG gun. One that's ideally got roll. But yeah, pretty good rolls that I got in this run. So we're gonna be getting 5 enemies on the beginning enemy wave. All of the enemies are gonna be on the lower floor, and after that we are gonna be focusing on doing the 3 satellite dishes. Now, the strategy for the satellite dishes is that we're gonna get 2 enemy waves as we do the progression on the dishes. If you have a decoy from where I'm gonna be facing, then we can YOLO it and complete the whole dish aligning thing while the enemies get focused on the decoys. But if for some reason your decoy is not out, it can be a pretty common thing, especially with the yellow eye success as I have currently, then you can run to cover as soon as the enemy spawn and try to kill them from a safe position before continuing along with the objectives. In this case, already did the objective, so I'm gonna be running towards this side again. This is the safest spot to fight from the A dish and try to deal with the second enemy wave for this objective. Be careful with the flanking because this encounter is really made for you to fight from pretty close quarters, while also making it very likely to get flanked by the enemies. So there you go. That's the second enemy wave for dish number A. I was going to say that dish letter A. Sorry. And yeah, I'm gonna grab my LMG drops. And I'm gonna be continuing towards dish letter B. For dish letter V, I like to drop a decoy right on this corner of this piece of cover, and if your decoy has enough threat from an expertise upgrade, or you get a high tier decoy like we currently have on the Tech Overdrive event. In this case, level tier, skill tier 3 decoy, if I remember correctly. That should be get enough attention from all the enemy waves that are going to be spawning from the west side where we came from originally. That should get the enemy's attention, and we should be able to complete the objective without too much of an issue. We just gotta be careful with the enemies that are gonna be climbing upstairs. That's the place where the enemies are able to flank us. And after some time, either if you run towards this letter C, or after you kill all the enemies from the beginning enemy wave, we are gonna be getting more enemies from the south side. It's gonna be from the door that's closest to where we have to run to continue along with the mission. So yeah, keep that into mind. That's gonna be the second enemy wave for this dish, and there you go. Now for here, I'm gonna be running towards this letter C. That's gonna be the last dish that we have to deal with. And for the decoy placement, we are gonna be doing this. I'm gonna be running towards this letter C. Just wait for me before I run for my LMG drops. There you go. I'm gonna be running towards the window, this one right over here. I'm not gonna jump into cover, and then I'm gonna be dropping a decoy right over there. We should be close enough so that we can drop a decoy on the upper floor right next to dish letter B, and we can continue along to align the antenna. When we get enough progression, the enemies are gonna be coming out from that door, and the decoy is going to be close enough so that we're able to get the attention of the enemies without getting shot ourselves. After aligning the dish, we can start focusing on the enemies, ideally from the right to the left side. Although, if we get flanked by the enemy from the left side, we can prioritize those enemies. There's also a piece of cover on the southeast side of this dish that we can also take cover from in case we get surrounded too heavily by the enemies. But most of the time I don't really get surrounded anymore by those enemies. I only really used that strategy when I was fighting against anchored enemies back in Year 8 Season 1. But yeah, it's not really the thing anymore, especially with stuff like One for All and the Contagion Passive Modifier. So anyways, that's gonna be the last enemy. No, that was the last enemy, sorry. And with that, we can continue along throughout the mission. Now, as we rappel down from the elevator shaft, before we continue along, we are going to be checking the elevator shaft that is to our left. And from here, we can find the next and final gear crate in this mission. Now, if you ask me, I did the flat earth Easter egg that is in this mission, and unfortunately, there's no extra gear crates that we can find on this mission. So yeah, 3 is going to be it for us to farm for gear crates in this mission. Most of the gear drops are gonna be coming from enemy kills in this case. But anyways, we're gonna get a beginning enemy wave for 5 enemies. We should be able to fight them from this position over here, from the upper side. And that position is gonna be very important because we are gonna be finding the rest of the enemy waves that are gonna be getting on this room. There's gonna be 2 enemy waves from the first thing, module escort thing that we have to do. They're gonna be spawning from that door. And on the second enemy wave from the first escort, we are gonna be getting an enemy under us. There's an enemy spawn right under us, so we have to be careful with those enemies. Now, luckily, because we have Contagion, we are gonna be getting extra 40% damage against that enemy with the help of Contagion. But still, we have to be careful on killing that enemy quickly enough because of proximity thing. Like, it doesn't even matter if we have a decoy nearby. The enemies are gonna be targeting us. So it's ideal that we try to kill them as soon as possible. And yeah, if you get I didn't get surrounded on this first escort, but for the second escort, we can take cover also on the white piece of thingies that we have to our left to try to run back in case we get surrounded by the enemies. I'm gonna be showing that strategy a little bit clearly sooner for the second escort run. So, anyways, before we continue along, we have to make sure that we have at least 700 LMG ammo because we're gonna be fighting 3 enemy waves, if I count them correctly, for this next part. So, once you're ready, we'll interact with the laptop, and then we'll run straight to our previous piece of cover, so that we're able to spawn kill the first wave of enemies. That first wave of enemies is also going to include an enemy underneath us. Gonna be dealing with that one so that they don't become too annoying. And gonna start focusing on fire on the rest of the enemies. Once you kill some of the enemies from the first enemy wave, the second enemy wave is going to spawn, also with another enemy right below us. And it's very important that we don't get flanked by the enemies, because otherwise we have to run towards this piece of cover that I was originally talking about a minute ago. Now, even though the lines of sight are pretty decent to fight against, the problem is that we are very likely to be surrounded by the enemies compared to the previous position that I was showing originally. Like, as I said, I was getting flanked by an enemy to my left side and I didn't even realize, I wasn't even able to hear them. And then there's another enemy that's trying to flank me as well from that little hallway. I'm trying to do my best to try to kill them, but because it's a jello, it's really hard to try to not get killed. There's another enemy that's trying to flank me, of course. And yeah, if things get too hectic, we can also run back to the hallway where we originally came from. That could be a decent position to fight the enemies as well. But again, we only have one place to fight the enemies essentially. And if we get out of room to fight the enemies, we can pretty much say goodbye to our escalation run. So yeah, we pretty much have to fight pretty aggressively in this room so that we have the greater chance at not getting killed. And with that, that's going to be the penultimate room in this mission. From here we can run towards the final room. For this next part, it doesn't matter how much ammo you have. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be fighting from behind these whiteboards. The enemies are not able to shoot through those whiteboards, and we can use that to cut line of sight. This is going to be a very important decision to master, especially for solo play, because the spawn points in this room are absolute ass. So yeah. That's pretty much the only position that I have managed to figure out to fight with the enemy waves. Now, how fast you are able to complete this room is going to depend heavily on how many one-for-all enemies you get. If you get enough enemies with one-for-all that are all close to each other, then you shouldn't have too much of an issue fighting the enemies and being able to clear the enemy waves. But if the enemies with one-for-all spawn way too far away from each other, then we pretty much have to rely more on the actual whiteboards themselves so that we're able to shoot at the enemies. Now, luckily, we have a pretty clear line of sight from the center of the room to the left side of the room. And as I said, we have to use the whiteboard pretty aggressively to be able to cut line of sight with enemies. There's still gonna be a chance that an enemy may be able to shoot at you, especially if it is a yellow enemy that is blind firing at you after being suppressed. But as I said, the line of sight is pretty easy to exploit. Like this, an example of what I was talking about. This computer right here, for example, is gonna be, I'm gonna call it a transparent object, essentially. We're able to shoot through the enemies and without too much of an issue. And also, this is the whiteboard strategy that I was talking about. Like, we can fight throughout these little gaps and be able to shoot at the enemies. This is going to be a pretty common sight, especially when you're fighting against the RPG guys. They like to stay around where the transmitter is currently sitting at. Luckily, the line of sight is decent enough so that we're able to shoot at them and even be able to shoot at their weak point, their backpacks, to make them stand up and be able to DPS them into oblivion. So yeah, I was pretty lucky in this run though, like both of the encounters in this final room were extremely short. And one way to make the encounter short for the second encounter in this room is going to be by relying on the Ravenous. The final boss is going to be a Chunga, and we can shoot them from the left shoulder to use the blue primer mechanic from the Ravenous. That's going to give us amplified damage against armor plates, which is what the Chunga boss has. And with that, we're able to dispatch them pretty easily. Now, if in this run you get an enemy with one for all as well, in this case the boss, we should be able to do a pretty nasty strategy where we're able to spread all the damage to all of the enemies just from shooting the boss. So you're gonna be seeing right away, gonna be shooting the boss, and as I'm shooting the boss, all of the enemy waves that are spawning below the boss, they are gonna get their damage spread towards the rest of the enemies. And because I'm dealing amplified damage to the boss armor plates, that amplified damage also applies to the enemies that are spawning below the boss. So yeah, it's a pretty nasty way to complete this mission in case you are lucky enough to get one for all boss in this final room. And if you don't, then the enemies will spawn from the left side, right where I'm currently aiming at. We can run back towards the previous room that I was talking about. We have an ammo crate right next to us, and we can again use the whiteboards to be able to deal with the enemies. It's a pretty safe strat overall to use, and I even use this strat for co-op, like have at least one player hiding over here, and you can protect the flank for the players that are fighting from near the transmitter. So anyways, that's Space Admin HQ, everyone. If you liked the video, you can like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. I read all of your comments. So anyways, I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and for all the support, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye bye.